Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.
Thank you so much. This has been great, and hello to all of you. I wanted to address the issue of politics. So we heard about, Bill saying that we need to muster the political will. We heard how is the geopolitical decision-making happening. Kaveh, you were saying we can't go to the same places and expect a different result. And then the question goes back to you. What are we telling heads of state and decision makers about how this transition is actually going to look like? Are they expecting a volatile, violent, unsafe transition, which is basically going to push them into a corner and say, I'm just going to gather as many resources as I have for myself? Or are we telling them, look, it's going to be highly cooperative, and if you trust another country with your security and your prosperity, we're all going to be better off? So what is that story that we're telling them from where we are now to where we all know we want to be in terms of renewable energy diffusion and dissemination and fossil fuel phase out and so on and so forth? What does that mean for trade? Right now you have trade people being more worried about how CBAM is violating trade rules than actually what CBAM might achieve. Or you have people thinking about price spikes with the CRMs. Are there enough CRMs for us to build the renewable energy or not? So what is that story? Because the story that these people are going to believe and the narrative that they're going to believe is going to define the actions that they take, which is then going to define the speed at which we're going to move. So have we done a good job as civil society in telling that story, that narrative of how that messy middle between today and 2050 looks like? Over.
Thank you.
I'm in agreement with all of my colleagues. To the question about civil society, I absolutely think, we work with various different civil society groups because, we want to ensure that the investment narrative and the investment and the positive impact that long-term investment can play. What the community are coming back to us, the civil society groups, and coming back to us are saying is that they're almost in need of reinventing their approaches because they feel that they're using the same tactics that they've unsuccessfully used in the past at a moment where we need to accomplish more than we've ever been able to accomplish in the past. So that sort of redesign, if you like, or re-engineering of how civil society can actually get its message taken on board and acted upon, I think is something that I know that a lot of the leaders within civil society and advocacy groups are prioritizing. I think from COP28, just call me the broken record. This mobilizing capital issue needs to be institutionalized within the whole UNFCCC process and not just a side event or a day at COP meetings. So I think if that fundamentally could happen, where there's support from UNFCCC to institutionalize the process and thereby encourage future hosts of COP summits, starting with COP28, to actually make that happen and inaugurate that, I think that would be a very powerful outcome. And one of the key underlying issues there, as we begin to think about how to make the nationally determined contribution projects more bankable and more investable, is to really address this issue. And this is one of the big issues that came out of the Africa Climate Summit, of how do you intermediate the natural resource, the critical minerals, the sort of the youth bulge, all of the different sort of super abundant natural capital that we have in emerging markets and developing countries, and integrate that into the $10 trillion per annum and growing global green industrial economy, and help us negotiate the value chain for that. And I think that in itself will solve a lot of the private capital and finance and investment related issues. Thank you.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.